When you look at Bitcoin's future, it really looks like a battleground. And as we head towards 2026, there are two massive forces just locked in this epic struggle. On one side, you've got huge institutions buying in, and on the other, intense pressure from regulators. So today, we're going to break down this high-stakes conflict and try to figure out where this is all headed.
So, what's it going to be for Bitcoin in 2026? Are we looking at a major breakthrough, or is some kind of breakdown more likely? Honestly, the next few years are absolutely pivotal. To really get what's at stake, we've got to look at the key forces pushing and pulling here, starting with the arguments for a huge surge forward.
All right, first up, the bull case. What are the big tailwinds that are really driving Bitcoin's momentum? Let's dive into the catalysts that have people so optimistic, because it really all starts with the big players finally deciding to join the party. We are seeing big money jump into the crypto space like never before. I mean, take Itaú, one of the biggest banks in all of Latin America. They're now actually telling their clients to consider Bitcoin. That is a massive vote of confidence from the world of traditional finance. And it's not just the banks. You've got tech giants like Google backing a Bitcoin mining firm with a multi-million-dollar contract. This isn't just hype anymore. This is a real structural shift.
Okay, but what about those long-term threats you always hear about, like quantum computing? You know, the fear that one day it could just crack Bitcoin's encryption wide open? Well, while it is a theoretical risk, the expert consensus, and you can see this in Grayscale's 2026 outlook, is pretty clear. This is a distant threat. It's not expected to have any real impact on the market anytime soon.
But here's where it gets really interesting. There's a fascinating counter-argument from people like Michael Saylor. He suggests that the threat of quantum computing will actually make Bitcoin stronger, that it'll force it to evolve and innovate its cryptography. So what some people see as this doomsday scenario, others see as a catalyst for growth. Pretty wild, right? Now, let's flip the script and look at the other side of the coin, the bear case. What are the really strong headwinds that could slow Bitcoin down, or maybe even throw it into reverse? Because it seems like for every piece of good news, there's a serious challenge right around the corner.
So, despite all that good news from institutions, market analysis is showing what you might call fatigue. The price is really struggling to punch through key resistance levels, those price points where it just seems to run out of steam. It's kind of like the engine is roaring, but the car just isn't moving, which suggests there isn't enough buying pressure to push it up to the next level.
And this market fatigue is happening alongside some real instability under the hood. For instance, just recently, the Bitcoin network lost a staggering 10% of its total computing power, its hash rate in a single day. Now, that hash rate is what keeps the whole thing secure. So a sudden drop like that, it can signal some major disruptive things are happening with miners, and it definitely raises questions about the network's stability in the short term.
And now, for a twist that just shows you how complex this whole situation is. Get this. Despite a government ban that's been in place for years, crypto miners in China have quietly clawed their way back. They now account for about 14% of the entire global hash rate. It's a pretty incredible sign of the network's resilience, but that resilience is living under the constant, dark shadow of a government crackdown that just won't quit. Beijing's hardline stance hasn't changed at all, which creates this permanent state of risk and uncertainty for a huge chunk of the network's global infrastructure. So beyond the clear bull and bear arguments, you've got the wild cards, these unpredictable global economic factors that could shove the market in either direction. And, you guessed it, a lot of them circle back to the world's second largest economy. And here we go again with China playing this crazy dual role. On the one hand, if the Chinese yuan gets stronger, that could actually be a good thing for riskier assets like Bitcoin. But on the other hand, that constant regulatory pressure from Beijing is a huge drag on how investors feel around the world. It's a perfect example of these complex and often totally contradictory forces that are at play. So, when you put it all together, what does this mean for Bitcoin on its way to 2026? Well, it's pretty clear we are heading into a decisive period. The future is anything but certain, and the tension between these opposing forces is really starting to heat up. This right here is the whole conflict in a nutshell. It's a giant tug of war. On one side of the rope, you've got the immense pull of big institutions and tech companies jumping in. On the other side, you've got the heavy drag of regulators, market fatigue, and just general global uncertainty. These are the forces that are going to shape Bitcoin's future, one way or another. Look, there's no denying that Bitcoin is maturing. The adoption by mainstream finance is real and it is growing. But at the exact same time, it is facing some of the most powerful resistance it has ever seen, from regulators and from these really complex market dynamics.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question. As we look towards 2026, as these powerful opposing forces collide with more and more intensity, which side is going to win? Which one will ultimately define the next chapter for Bitcoin?